In the shadowed forests, the tornado of fate. In the shadow of majestic mountains, shrouded in clouds and deserted by snow, there was a protected area, Light Peaks. This place attracted tourists with its wildlife and potential adventures. But no one could have known that it was here that the dramatic story of a group of travelers faced with the inexorable force of nature would unfold. The Pioneer Group. There were 5 tourists in the group, each of whom brought their own story with them. Dmitry is an experienced traveler who has always been looking for thrills. His passion for mountaineering from birth led him to many peaks of the world, and he dreamed of conquering the reserved Light Peaks. Maria is a botanist who traveled to the mountains to study rare plant species. Since childhood, she dreamed of exploring nature in its pristine form. Sergei is a photographer who strives to capture the wild corners of nature. He brought with him sophisticated equipment and a lot of expectations, hoping for successful shots. Anna is a lone traveler, looking for peace in the mountains, escaping from the hustle and bustle of the city. She was full of hope and ready for new acquaintances. Igor is an expert on survival in the wild. He joined the group to share his skills and was preparing for possible bumps along the way. The beginning of the journey. The group met at the foot of the mountains on a sunny day when nature seemed especially welcoming. A light breeze brought freshness, and the smell of pine needles and earthy moisture was felt in the air. The first days were spent in joyful gatherings around the campfire, exchanging stories and exploring the surroundings. But after a few days, when the route took them into the deep woods, the mood began to change. The tangle of trees and the darkness that covered the highway created an oppressive feeling. It seems that nature itself was watching them. Meeting with a wild beast, one evening the group decided to look at several unique plants that they found along the way. They plunged into the thicket, so engrossed in their research that they did not notice how the dawn began to darken. Suddenly, a low growl broke the silence. A huge brown bear came out from behind the bushes. He wasn't just a wild animal. He looked emaciated, with sunken eyes and a coat of fur that had thinned in places. It looked like he needed something, and there was a chilling fear in it. Panic and chaos. The group instantly lost their minds. Dmitry, forgetting about everything, decided to run. A whirlwind of emotions took hold of them, and the tourists scattered in different directions, leaving behind their belongings and equipment. Maria, unprepared for the panic, barely had time to breathe. She's an expert on plants, but not on wildlife. Her mind was filled with fear. Where to run? In an attempt to trip over a tree root, she fell and did not have time to get up. Igor, remembering his skills, started packing and tried to organize a group. But people were blind with fear, and when he shouted for them to get together, Sergei had already disappeared into the hills of the thicket with a camera at the ready. Anna, feeling that salvation lay in flight, confidently walked along the path. But the bear headed in her direction. She didn't understand what was going on. She got in the way between the trees and hid behind the massifs, as if they could protect her. Meanwhile, Dmitry, who had experience, realized that threatening a bear was a bad idea. He quickly found the cherished tree and climbed it, hoping that others would do the same. But at that moment, the bear noticed him. A loud growl shook the ground. At the top of the tree, Dmitry saw the rest of the group scattered in various directions. An inner fear stirred in his chest. He was alone in this madness, wrapped up in the forest, and his only knowledge was that the bear would not leave until they were out in the open. Confrontation and rescue. A few minutes later, as the tension grew, the bear reached Maria. She panicked, clutching her bag of plant samples tighter. Seeing this, Dmitry shouted at her, and his cry attracted the attention of the bear. Brown, breathing heavily, went to the tree where Dmitry was sitting, but suddenly, with a heavy groan, he turned around, noticing movement. At that moment, Igor, a tough wildlife lover, approached them. He got his bearings by throwing something from his backpack at the bear's feet to distract it. It worked. The bear turned around again, which gave Maria the opportunity to run out of the thicket. As a result, the group gathers together, realizing that unity is the key to salvation. Clinging to each other, they realized that the only way to survive was to move together towards the light, far from the gloomy forest. Exit from the forest. Gathering their willpower, they began to move towards the exit. Every step was filled with fear and hope at the same time. The forest thundered behind them, and the bear, like a shadow from nightmares, followed them, still unconquered and ruthless. Finally, when the evening turned dark, they came to the edge of the forest. Here, far from the darkness, the group froze and, catching their breath, saw how the bear was left behind. Completion. This adventurous night remained in their hearts forever. They have learned to appreciate not only the beauty of nature, but also its wild character. Each in his own way, they became closer to each other, realizing that trust is what helps to cope with fear. The brown bear, which became a symbol of their trials, remained in the memory of each of them as a sign of respect for the power of nature. And although they returned to their daily lives, their hearts were filled with the wonders and horrors of this summer at Bright Peaks.